Greetings. Thank you for joining us again. This is Will with Perpetual Assets, and very excited to have a long overdue guest back on the line, Dr. Jim Willie. He's the editor of the Hat Trick Letter, which is found on the website The Golden Jackass, or goldenjackass.com. We'll, of course, have links. Jim, welcome back. Sorry for the epic delays in getting this done. Happy Friday. I hope you're well, my good man.
Oh, it's good to be back with you, Will. I'm glad to hear you're back in shape. I know things aren't 100%, but sometimes at our age, if we can get 80% and stay above ground, we're in good shape.
Yeah, it's a humbling experience, isn't it? To get to when your health, you quickly realize that health is the most important factor in your life. Money,
Yeah.
freedom. I mean, none of it matters when you're sick as a dog, really.
Well, it's kind of interesting. You had a very severe problem with your back discs and sciatic nerve and that whole area, and I'm having a very weird consequence to the bronchial flu that I never expected. I lost 10 or 12 pounds, and I think I altered the structure, the tissue and muscle and regular whatever it is that's in the hip area, and I got a pinched nerve.
Yeah.
It's a bad one. It's a pinched nerve. It's been over 3 weeks, and I've been doing stretching, physical therapy, and medication, and it's almost better, but it's not better. It's not all better. Anyway, I'm just dealing with it. It's just one thing after another.
Yeah.
But my brain works, my mouth works, and I'm happy to report that my lungs and my voice and my throat are almost all back to normal. Everything's fine there. I'm just really struggling with my right leg. I can't spend much time at the desk. Anyway, I could go on and on.
That's from the hip, Jim, from the pinched nerve?
Yeah. I can't be seated. I got to keep the legs straightened out, and like right now, I got my legs straightened out under the desk.
Mm-hmm.
but I'm
well,
okay.
I don't know if homeopathic herbs are worth it. I think they are. In fact, we've been using them with, the homeopathic, hell, they've been around for 100 years. You can get a whole box of them. And we have a box of them, when my kid has a runny nose or whatever, we, load them up with these. And we're kind of hippies like that. I'd rather try that rather than inoculate her with a whole bunch of poisons. But obviously, if the kid's sick, we go to the doctor, and we I just had back surgery, for God's sakes. I talked to homeopathic doctors who looked at me and said, "Yeah, there is no homeopathic answer to your condition unless you want permanent nerve damage and you lose the use of your left foot forever." So there are times when Western medicine and those types of things are very valuable to our health and our recovery. But anyway,
nice irony.
Long babble short there. Hypericum. I'll send you it's. I found it. It's for nerve injury, and I've been taking the 4 tablets under your tongue 4 times a day. It's a homeopath. I don't know if it does crap or not, but hey, it can't hurt. So maybe I'll send you some.
Well, what's giving me relief is something called Voltaren. And I was putting a cream on the hip area where I thought the pinch was, where the physical therapist did. But now I'm just taking orally, and it works very well. And what it does is it gives me a whole new day, fresh start, where nothing is wrong, no pinch, no right leg pain. And I just have to avoid the things that hurt the leg, which is sitting at a desk or riding a bike hard.
Yeah, which is one of your passions.
Walking is actually very good for it because it's you got everything straightened out, nothing's bent.
Yep.
You're using the gluteus muscles, and I think I need to rebuild. So I'm going to do some gluteus muscle training and try some homosexual herbs. I don't know what the homosexual herbs are, but I'm a little reluctant to try anything like that.
Well, I could see you right now. I could picture you on the Stairmaster just working that booty.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get going here, Will. I got work to do. So do you. There are so many very critical hot areas right now, and almost all of them are related to the dollar and its rejection and its difficulties in sustaining, like the bond market. The U.S. should be at 15% for their bond yields right now. because we're worse than what Greece or Italy ever were.
Hey, I might buy at those yields, buddy.
Not me, because it'll go to 20 and you'll lose a third of your money.
You're right. You're right.
I mean, we got to put things into perspective. What nation has a $550 billion trade deficit? I think this year will be 600. Jeez. I like to put things into perspective. Here are two very startling facts of life relative to that annual trade deficit of at least 550 billion. That is equal to roughly 12,000 tons of gold forfeited at a $1,300 price.
Wow.
We didn't even have that much when Fort Knox had gold, and now Mnuchin, Treasury Secretary, had a dog and pony show to show off what Rob Kirby and I believe to be their warehouse full of tungsten salted gold bars.
Wow. Yeah, I saw the pictures after I saw the back and forth, and people are like, well, where are the pictures?
Well, I think they're gold covered tungsten bars, but some in the back might be yellow painted
bricks,
wooden pieces. I don't know. We did recover hundreds of wooden pieces, yellow wooden pieces, blocks in Iraq. So maybe we're storing them in Fort Knox too. Okay, it's 12,000 or roughly tons of gold in 1 year, and likely to be worse in the next because we're not reindustrializing the United States. Here's the second example. I get some fools write me and say, but Jim, we could back it by oil. We got the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So do some calculations and, do all the math and just use for rough figures on a napkin, $50 oil. Okay, well, that's a nice $70 billion worth of oil. I'm sorry, I do this every time. It's $7 billion worth of oil in the petroleum reserve. So we need 70 of them. We need 80 of them every year to cover the forfeit from the trade deficit after we lose the global currency reserve status. Because after we lose it, we got to pay our bills. And we have not been paying our bills for the last 20 years. We've just been going to war so we could steal assets and have foreigners pay our war costs. But something remarkable happened about 3 or 4 years ago. We had the great idea to pay for our war bills with heroin.
Oh, Jesus. Do you have those statistics handy, Jim? The Afghanistan statistics? I interviewed you a year or two ago. 2 years, 3. You went through the statistics, the numbers of heroin usage, imports, exports, availability in the U.S., the numbers out of Afghanistan. I mean, it was like if you don't read those statistics and get sick, angry, mad at your government, something's wrong with you.
Well, I don't have them in front of me right now, but I have some off the top of my head. Since the U.S. entered, the heroin tonnage per year has gone from something like, from Afghanistan, from before we were there, it was around 130 tons a year. Now it's around 1,400 tons a year. And amazingly, after it started ramping up, the Langley boys went before Congress and said we need more funding because we've got to stop the Taliban and all their production of heroin when we were successfully ramping it up. So the American public is so clueless.
Oh, yeah.
But here's a consequence. There are two consequences. First is Langley is able now, with the help of Saudi Arabia, their partner in the heroin business, to fund ISIS. And we have charades like the arms deal that Trump had with the Saudis. That was a dog and pony ridiculous show. It was straight out of, a vaudeville scene. We committed what Obama had promised, and we delivered a lot of older weapons that ISIS guerrillas don't mind using, if they have two choices, an old rifle or nothing, they choose an old rifle. Okay, so now you've got this phenomenon of ISIS being funded by heroin, and we claim that they're not funded by the U.S. military, therefore they're independent. Okay, that's a very nice, interesting argument. Okay, the other consequence hits home. Big Pharma has very cheap heroin. So, the opioid prescriptions are out of sight. Let's not talk about legitimate uses like people who have disc problems.
Yeah, I just went through it personally. I'm happy to share this experience.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a statistic out of Ohio for the year 2016. 850 million
Holy cow.
Opioid prescriptions.
Goodness.
Now, they've got an 11 million population, so...
Is that per person, Jim? 850 million per script? So like a script per person. That's 850 million people? No, that's no way.
850 million prescriptions in the full year.
In the year, holy crap. So that's,
Okay, so we're talking about a lot of repeat usage. Wow. We're talking about addictive usage. Mm-hmm. And, I get clients who say, you sure it isn't 85 million? I'll tell you, when I read the article, my first impression was, holy mackerel, that's like triple the U.S. population. Okay, that's what I remember to keep my units correct. It was not 85 million. It was triple the U.S. population in units.
Night.
Okay, so Big Pharma doesn't mind this ramp up because they're making a lot of money. Their cost structure is way low. Mm-hmm. And it's all legal. It's prescription from your doctor.
Yeah, and the insurance companies are flipping the bill, aka state-funded insurance companies now. Taxpayer dollars are flipping the bill. When I go fill a prescription of 90, 10 milligram Percocets, and I'm done with it all now. But dude, they give them out when you're. Okay, so when you go into an ER and you say I have pain and this and that, they typically look like you're a crackhead. I went through 5 ERs, one in Panama, a couple in Texas, and a couple in California. So I know my stuff here as it pertains to like getting pain meds for extreme pain. When you finally have the MRI and you're finally in the care of an orthopedic here in Southern California, they give them out like candy. I went for my 2-week post-op follow-up. 2 weeks after surgery, successful surgery, all the leg spasms and extreme pain was gone. In fact, I'd already started weaning off the pain pills because I wasn't in pain anymore. I had like some post-op discomfort, but that wasn't pain compared to what I'd experienced before. Dude, I go for my 2-week follow-up. I'm talking to the doc about withdrawing, and he's ready to write me, what do you need 90 more? I'm like, this is insane. I'm trying to get off of them. Give me a little bit of Xanax or something to help me with the epic anxiety and other things. But no, it's unreal. I'm
wondering what the kickbacks are from Big Pharma to the doctors who prescribe.
They've got to be astronomical. They've
got to be some kickbacks. But here's the other side to Big Pharma's profit on the opioid sales. Mm-hmm. If you develop an addiction, they've got drugs for that too,
of course,
which the doctor will prescribe.
Lots of them. Yes.
And I was on interview with Chuck Ocelli, and he was rattling off 3 or 4 of the drugs. Mm-hmm. I don't know what they are. I just know there's a whole class of anti-addiction drugs for the opioids.
Anti-nausea, anti-anxiety. There's tons. I had to start taking an anti-nausea pill when I first was trying to get off of them because the nausea was so bad I didn't want to throw up, and if you throw up, you can re-herniate your disc.
Well, I've heard some rumors, Will, that Big Pharma's got some anti-anxiety pills for the dollar.
I hope so. It's gonna need it.
All right, let's move into the dollar. The huge news by China, and the big news is that the Chinese have an oil contract that's going to be linked to the gold contract. And I don't know the full details because, believe it or not, China is not revealing all of their plans, all of their intricate inner workings.
That's a surprise.
But we're told, and you read it on Zero Hedge and several other, oh my gosh, The list is very long for references on this. You got Russia Insider, you got the Asia Nikkei, you got Investment Research Dynamics. They're all reporting on this. They're calling it a new world order oil benchmark backed by gold. Okay, so it's an oil futures contract that's got some form of gold backing or gold payment. And if it doesn't have a gold payment, you can easily go to Shanghai and link the two. You purchase your oil contract, and with the proceeds, you buy a gold contract. I've been saying now for the last 6 months, sooner or later, the Chinese are going to come up with a contract that linked the two, oil with gold. And apparently they've got it, but the details are not clear yet. I don't think this is ramping up in volume yet, but it is on the table. It is way past the designer stage. This is now working toward implementation. And China and Russia have already an enormous volume of non-dollar transactions in not just oil, but in natural gas. And the Chinese set up a bank, Sberbank, S-B-E-R. I don't really know how it's pronounced, but Sberbank. Sberbank has offices now in Beijing and I believe Shanghai. So Sberbank is the link to take the RMB currency that China gives Russia for the energy purchases, and the Kremlin can use Sberbank to convert to gold. Okay, that's a two-step process, but now China has an oil gold contract in its design on the table, and there are a lot of eyes waiting for this to be revealed in its full glory and details, including me. Okay, that's just one big zinger from China. Now we have some other news, Will. I don't know if you heard about this, but there's a delay until 2019, apparently, being denied by Riyadh and Saudi Arabia, a delay in the Aramco IPO. And I can think of a couple good reasons. The Voice had some very sharp comments about that. He said, all the big players are realizing that it is a fraudulent investment opportunity. And what he means by that is way overpriced. Aramco and the officials are saying this is a $2 trillion investment, and we're going to sell 10% of it for $200 billion.
Right.
And out come a bunch of Wall Street and London energy analysts who do this for a living, and they compare to Exxon, they compare to Royal Dutch Shell, they compare to Rosneft of Russia, and they conclude, well, we think 10% might be worth something in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 billion. Not 200. In other words, they're off by a factor of 4 or 5.
Yeah, 500% overvalued. Yeah.
I've been saying for a while now, at least a couple months, a light bulb went off in my head after I did some reading and some thinking and some reporting and some writing about the Aramco deal. I thought, well, gee, I think China's going to get in there. They're going to buy a stake. And then they're going to demand from the company with which they have investment that Saudis sell the Chinese oil and accept RMB payments. Let me just run a list here. I'm looking at a pie chart. It's Chinese crude oil imports. A little piece for Venezuela and a little piece for Brazil. It looks like about half of it is the Gulf region, and a piece of that is Iran. Okay, but here's the point. Here's the point. Chinese are going to have the right soon, and I believe, and so do a couple jackass colleagues who will go without names, we believe China's already paying for Saudi oil in RMB terms.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just keeping it quiet.
Right.
And the United States knows it, but if it becomes really public, then the United States will unleash terrorism in Riyadh and other cities in Saudi Arabia and blame it on ISIS.
Right, right.
Which is under our control.
Because there's no Chinese ISIS agents yet, huh? And that would be a whole,
yet,
that'd be a whole nother
on
war.
They're working on it.
God almighty.
I think in Tibet they're working on it.
You'll have Tibet, you'll have Chinese and Russian ISIS squads
actually, there already are Chinese variety. I think they're called Urugus or Urugh. I can't remember the name. But anyway, here's the upshot. When China wins the right for RMB payments to Saudi, everything is going to change.
Yeah, legally, right? I mean, from a global, legal framework status.
Yeah, and it's going to have a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, China has done other things that are very clever, not so much tricky as just efficient, proficient, and smart. Mm-hmm. They've got a number of investments in Saudi Arabia that have been recently announced, having to do with petrochemical development, the business, mining, and other investments, because the Saudis are really dead set on broadening their economy beyond the petrochemical industry, which is, just energy and related, like lubricants and, feeder stock that are based in petroleum.
All the pick and shovels, right?
Yeah. The Saudis want a technology sector. The Saudis want, development of numerous other sectors outside of energy. And they're not going to win it. They're just not going to get there because they're too late. They're like 20 years late. They waited till their reserves are depleted. They've waited till they've got a scummy war replete with war crimes in Yemen. They've waited for all kinds of problems to develop. They've waited for their bond offerings that have not been successful. They waited 20 years too long to develop their economy.
They've taken also half of their human population and human brains and treated them like cattle. I'm referring to the women, of course, who some of which might offer quite incredible things as far as growth and development of an economy and of a nation. But when you take half of your people, regardless of their sex, and you take the gay people and throw them off of buildings and burn them, you take half your population and basically shut its brain off. So that can't be very productive for a society. Just my 2 cents.
I think the Saudis will go down in history as one of the most unsuccessful generations for economic development, resulting in failure.
Yep.
In modern history.
Yeah.
It's a lot worse than what you think, because if you look at the Saudi able-bodied male population, you'll find that under 20% of them work because most of them have Philippine and Pakistani and Indian servants.
Wow.
They don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And to be sure, there are a lot who do work, and they're in executive positions, like, running Aramco. But they also, in Aramco, have a lot of foreign contractors. And if you think the problems don't extend to their successful petrochemical area, you are dead wrong. I've been receiving reports for 2 years of people writing me through Contact Us at the goldenjackass.com website, stating to me, I'm a German contractor and I have not been paid in 6 months.
Wow.
In Saudi Arabia. I'm a Scandinavian. I have not been paid for 1 year. I am stranded here. And they're reporting it from Saudi, and they're reporting it from UAE. UAE is in such dire straits that the princes have now been hiring the Western upper-level accounting firms like McKinsey and others. Mm-hmm. They're hiring them to falsify documents in order to steal bank accounts. I'm not making this up. I'm getting this from people on the ground in UAE.
Unreal.
Yeah. So that's how desperate these formerly extremely filthy rich Gulf Arab countries have been. I'm talking about Saudi and UAE. So why are they resorting to funding and supporting ISIS? Because they're broke and they want to use ISIS to steal other countries' resources.
Hopefully increase the price of oil again with more chaos. I don't know.
Yeah, they're trying to steal Iraq and their oil, and not going to work. Oh, boy. Anyway, so we have so many different events that are happening that are damaging and crippling to the dollar. There's another one that's on the edge of dollar support, and that is the Turks just managed to settle on a rather significant weapons contract, a weapons deal with Russia. Now, this is a NATO nation. Okay, they've got one of the most important Air Force bases in all of NATO. It used to be the primary heroin distribution depot from Afghanistan to Turkey to Europe. And what I've been told, this is from informed people, that the NATO commanders have switched. They're not using Turkey anymore for the heroin. It's going straight to Germany.
Wow.
At Ramstein. Ramstein is like a city. It's not an Air Force base. It is a city to have an Air. They've now doing all the transport for heroin. I've also been told that the Italian NATO base has picked up.
And this is because Turkey is not playing ball anymore?
Turkey wants to arrest some of the NATO people, officers who were involved in the attempt to assassinate Erdogan and conduct the coup d'etat.
Good for them. Good.
So the United States wanted to take control of Turkey, and it didn't work. So there's yet another foreign policy blunder with an enormous backfire. Now look at, switch over to Venezuela quickly. You have another foreign policy blunder where the United States said we're not going to buy any more Venezuelan oil. So it goes to Russia. Rosneft came in, and this is a very interesting concept. I've explained this in a couple of other interviews, Will, but Russia has come in with a contract to purchase Venezuelan oil. Now, Venezuela is an exporter. Russia's the biggest producer in the world, the biggest exporter in the world. Why is Russia buying Saudi oil, Iranian oil, and now Venezuelan oil?
For business relationships?
It's a lot more than that. That is a big piece of it. That's the psychological and the handshake part of it.
Right.
But Russia is working toward what I call an oil consortium. They're developing a pool of oil. And it's going to be backed, I think, by the St. Pete oil contract. And what Rosneft has for a task is to mix the blends. Mix them. Because Venezuela has a problem. It's very little known. They have been purchasing, as a requirement, the light, sweet Nigerian oil in order to mix with the Venezuelan very heavy oil.
Right.
It's a viscosity issue. So Venezuela, being short on cash, has not been able to export oil to gain cash because they cannot buy the Nigerian oil.
Interesting. So their product is their product coming out of their ground is not really valuable to the marketplace until they buy that foreign product and mix it in.
And to Rosneft from Russia with a commitment to buy a certain amount, provide them the cash,
so that their output maintains value.
And my guess is they're not handing cash. Maybe to some extent they are for Venezuela to handle its debt, but my guess is they're handing them oil.
Yeah.
And
They're just giving them the Nigerian sweet, buying it and giving it to them, and guaranteeing that output back from them.
look for Nigeria to join the Russian oil consortium soon. Saudi Arabia just had a deal to sell Rosneft and Russia oil. Why would they do that? Saudi has some of the sweetest oil around. Cash. Okay, now when Saudi is pressured by the United States and Washington says to them, look, you son of a bitch ragheads, you're doing selling oil outside the dollar. They're going to say no.
Oh, buddy, you broke up there. You said you said that the U.S. is going to go to them and say, you've been selling oil outside of the dollar, and they're going to say no.
The Saudis have now an excuse. They can say, the Russians are selling our oil, and they're selling it outside the dollar. It's not our doing.
Gotcha. It's all the Russians. We blame the damn Russians again. It's perfect global meme. I love it.
Now, the Russians have two tasks, from what I understand regarding oil sales. Two tasks with the physical oil. One is to manage the viscosity, and the other is to manage the contaminant levels.
Manage viscosity. I'm just clarifying because you broke up, and then manage the contaminant levels. Are there two
right
responsibilities?
Viscosity and contaminant level. I'm talking about sulfuric levels.
Okay.
Okay, and the viscosity, that's just a basic thickness and how many carbon atoms are in its molecule. Okay.
Right. So
for instance, the Alberta tar sands. That's bitumen with 200 carbon atoms per molecule.
Way too thick, right?
Way
too thick?
Way too thick, so therefore they have to break it down in order to make it usable for refineries.
Right, okay.
It's all about supply to refineries and supply to petrochemical complexes that, make motor oil out of it for machines and cars. Okay, so Russia is making a consortium, and they're doing a good job. They've got a financial side to this whole problem, and that is to integrate their supply chain with the St. Pete futures contract. And to be honest, I do not know what the Urals oil, how that is featured. I do not think there's a futures contract for Urals Russian oil, the Russian Ural oil. I think there's only a future contract for St. Pete in, just in the Finland, Baltic area. Okay, now, oh my gosh. So let's just sum it up. Russia's working together with other key nations, and they're talking to Mexico now.
Yeah.
To build up the consortium oil supply. And I guarantee you one thing, none of it will be sold in dollars.
Yeah, well, Mexico's hungry because they just had an energy crisis. I mean, I don't know, I go down there quite a bit. They had a massive pump crisis at the pumps. Prices exploded, and there were huge lines. And this was months ago, but
well, they've got a problem in that Pemex is running short on funds. They're running deficits. So, I'm sure they're doing their best to mix in their heroin with their budgets.
Oh, jeez.
No, this is reality.
Yeah. No, it's just down in Mexico. It's you've got cartels, and we Hollywood makes movies about it and all this stuff. But what little did the American public realize that all that stuff and worse is happening at much higher levels within our government and global governments around the world.
And the Texas banks are all involved. The big ones are all involved in the Mexican drug movement and money laundering. That's how they're staying afloat.
Yeah.
Why are they in need of doing that? Because of the lower oil price, because of failed investment with the shale sector. That's the Texas-Oklahoma system.
Yep.
Okay. Let's go back to my little summary. The Russians are building an oil consortium for non-dollar sales, and it fills a void that OPEC has left. OPEC is in disunity. They can't agree on anything. They make a deal and it's not honored by its members. OPEC is for dollar sales in oil. OPEC is the main device to enforce the petrodollar de facto standard, and it is close to dead. Enter the void the Russian oil consortium. Not only that, but the Russians have joined forces with Iraq and Qatar for a natural gas cartel, which also is not dollar related for its sales. The irony is that the United States military has a central command control center in Qatar, and they're allowing all this to happen, which convinces me that the U.S. military is about to raise a white flag that says we are prepared for a dual universe of dollar and RMB. And when you say RMB, just think ruble RMB, you know, the Russian and the Chinese together. They're mixing their currencies in the energy market. The dual universe will be tolerated by the U.S. You know, when Iran sold oil outside the dollar, they got sanctions. When Saddam sold for euros, he got an invasion and he got hanging.
Gaddafi was up there too. Well, that wasn't really oil related. That was more gold currency related, right?
Well, it was related to oil in that they wanted gold dinar payments, which is, again, outside the dollar.
Right.
So very much in the same theme, but with a dollar tint.
So you think this I'm sorry.
No, the result is that you've got oil and gas that are going to be united with powerful consortiums and cartels and pipelines for gas that we're going to lose the war on. And they're all going to be non-dollar, and it is going to be the framework, like a skeleton system for the Eurasian trade zone that will extend into the Middle East and have shipping rights to South America, where Venezuela is located, and so is Brazil.
Jim, could this be like up and running, functional in like 12 months?
I've been running.
You broke up there, buddy. Say that again. Crap, we're getting a funky connection here.
I'm sorry. I'm anything unusual here.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll get back.
The Russian oil consortium is working now.
It's already functioning.
Yeah, they've got Iranian oil that they're purchasing. They got Saudi oil that they're purchasing.
Now you're back. That's good. So it's already functioning. So you think that this, when you mentioned a minute ago that the U.S. military is allowing this, and you think that they're going to raise a white flag, that gives me sort of the initial idea of, is there a good guy, bad guy? Like is this a white hat sector within the U.S. military allowing this, while your Langley boys are still trying to target the invasion or the next ISIS or what have you? Or is that fragment still? Obviously, it's still there because we're still getting chemtrailed and other things. But can you speak to that a little bit? That fragment within the U.S.
In general, the U.S. military, not the white hats, not the black hats. This is just generally the Pentagon.
Okay.
Is going to come to a fight war to defend anymore. We're going to let the army run its course. We're going to let these guys work with the Gulf region, RMB sales, ruble sales, conversion in Shanghai to gold. Let them do what they're going to do, because I think the ugly element within the Pentagon that joins forces with the Langley and the narco boys, I think they're so confident that they're swimming in trillions of dollars of narco money.
Wow.
They're so confident they have bought off governments to continue banking loyalty and blockades. Like for instance, there are a couple countries in Central America that don't have Chinese banks. Those are your countries very tightly woven into the narco. For instance, I like talking about this example because it's not home. It's not a good idea to talk about home much. Honduras suffered, I think it was about 5 years ago, a coup d'etat by their military. Now, I'm not saying that their civilian private sector government was all that good. But now they've got a military junta running their government in Honduras. Capital is Tegucigalpa, has a nickname of Teguch. I've been there a couple times. I just wanted to get around. I had to get around, had to leave the country to satisfy visa requirements. I thought, I've been to Nicaragua several times. I'm going to go up into Honduras, and it was not pleasant. I mean, they do have a Clarion hotel. They have a Hyatt hotel. It looks nice. They have nice roads. But, get outside the roads. I mean, get outside the city and the roads turn to crap with potholes everywhere. And you got a lot of violence. I hear their murder rate is doubled or more since the military coup d'etat. But the main point I bring up Honduras is that they are a primary mover of heroin for the United States. Primary mover of heroin for the Langley boys. And I think the banking is done in Panama and other areas I don't like to talk about much. Panama is a big area for narco money laundering. It's a big area for the black bag operation funding for Langley. So Langley uses Panama for two things: to manage their dark projects, but also to move money from, say, the captured Colombian Medellin cartel. Okay, that's a success story for Papa Bush. Captured Medellin cartel. What happened in Colombia after Langley captured the Medellin cartel? We're talking about Pablo Escobar and those guys. They installed the leader of the Medellin cartel as president.
Wow.
His name is Uribe.
How did that fly with the local population at the time? I mean, were they like, what? Are you kidding me? Now our president is the cartel boss?
It's far more practical and simple than you might think. The crime rate went down. People were happy. Their sons were not being killed. The crime rate went down.
Because you had one mob boss and not 10 mobs fighting each other?
They took over the country, and the competition was Medellin versus the Cali.
Yeah.
And Cali submitted and said, okay, we're all going to win. They stopped the war. I'm just making this up, but I bet you if you do research, you'll find something like this. If you look at the cabinet for the president, whatever they call it, group of ministers. The United States is the only one that calls it a cabinet. All the other countries call it a group of ministers. You look at the Colombian group of ministers, you'll probably see a couple from Cali. Okay, so everybody's happy. And they're not killing each other anymore. So Papa Bush did a wonderful thing, capturing the heroin cartels. But he did something ugly also in Colombia, and I have first-hand information on this because I've got a very good friend whose wife is Colombian, and she has 2 or 3 family members in Colombia. They keep track with phone calls, and my buddy, he keeps track, and he talks to them. He's got, he bought one of them a house. He's in contact with them. The Colombian government, under Bush instructions, burned the farms down, burned and lit the farm fields when they refused to accept the Monsanto GMO seeds.
Wow.
So, the heroin is linked to the other disgusting activity by the globalists. They want the GMO seeds so they can maybe reduce the fertility level, and they can maybe introduce with more efficiency the virus control mechanisms. It makes you sick just to hear about it all. Anyway, the point is that Russia is leading the charge for the physical energy market to be non-dollar. China is leading the charge for the financial battle to oppose the dollar. China is looking for payments outside the dollar and conversion of cash types into gold, while Russia is building the consortium for oil and organizing the cartel with Qatar right under our noses. Why doesn't the U.S. military in Qatar organize a coup d'etat in Qatar, bring about new emirs, more in keeping with the Saudi line of Islam? I don't want to get into all that. Why don't they do that? I think because they realize this is a battle we cannot win. And if you look at some of the figures out there for, say, RMB usage in global trade, they're still very small. And, it's almost embarrassing how small. I'm actually looking for some figures. I don't know exactly where it is in my... I've got a bunch of notes now for my...
Do you think there's a discrepancy, Jim, from actual reported numbers?
No, I'm looking at the chart right now.
Okay.
The Chinese yuan, it's something like 3% of global trade payments. Okay. The British pound is something in the order of 10%. The British pound is like triple the Chinese yuan. Okay. The euro and the are a decent run. The dollar, 4%. Well, I was in the 30% area, and the pound area. The Japanese yen is pretty small. More trade payments in Japanese yen than there are in Chinese RMB.
Tell me those percentages one time again, please, quickly. You just broke up a little bit there. Just the percentages.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, buddy.
I know it's not your fault. It's just annoying. The dollar around 40% of trade payments.
40% on the dollar, global trade payments.
Maybe a little bit more, a smidge more. The euro is something on the order of a little over 30%, like 33%.
Okay.
And the British pound is something on the order of 8 or 9%, close to 10%.
Impressive.
The Japanese yen is more than the RMB from China. This is global share of payments for trade.
For trade, okay.
Right. It's something like, maybe 3% for the RMB, and it's hard to say. I'm looking at a chart and just, at the scale at the same time. It looks like 2 or 3% for RMB and maybe 5 or 6% for the Japanese yen. Okay, so when I say that the U.S. is going to raise the white flag, what they're going to do is they're going to issue a challenge. They're going to say, all right, you amateurs in the financial sector in China, go for it. Have a good go. Because we don't think your RMB is going to really get traction. We don't think it's going to go anywhere. But can you think of what the big error might be in the U.S. judgment?
The value of the dollar?
The Chinese might integrate gold, which will instantly deliver like a poison pill to the U.S. dollar financial platform.
You mean integrate gold directly into their currency?
I didn't say currency. I said integrate. I was talking about trade payments, right?
Gotcha. Okay. So you may see a Chinese gold trade become even larger than a RMB payment.
I'm thinking this oil for gold futures contract in Shanghai is going to eventually evolve into a gold trade note for practical usage. That's the error of judgment that the Washington fascists are likely to make. They'll say to China, have a good go at it, and as soon as they introduce gold into the trade payment system, that is a poison pill to the dollar financial structures. That is the way I think it's going to go.
Interesting.
That's the path I think China has chosen.
Hmm.
I don't want to get into cryptocurrencies and how that might get integrated. I'm trying to think a little higher level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think, okay, I appear to have got the correct forecast that I have been issuing for the last 3 years or more of a gold trade note that China would introduce into the global trade system with oil.
Say that again. Say that last portion again. A global trade note that China would introduce into the global
China
system.
would introduce to be primarily in the energy sector.
Primarily in the energy sector.
Precisely that.
Mm-hmm.
So this has all. I can't say this all right. No, I piece of this right, and I give a lot of credit to the voice. Voice 2013. The work going on for a gold trade note. It'll have leverage. It will replace the Treasury bill for oil payments, and its originator will be China. It'll take a couple of years to develop.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's telling me, he's telling me this essentially gold for oil futures contract that might later have a face on it that looks like a gold trade note for, transaction purposes. He said to me, this is the first of several big items coming soon on the table, all of which have been extensively stress tested.
Mm-hmm.
So the gold trade note, now in a futures contract format, is going to be followed by other things. And what will be in common with all of them will be gold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me put this more generally. The common characteristic of all these new instruments that China's going to introduce will be the absence of the dollar.
Yeah.
And the inevitability of eventually a gold roll.
Yep.
That's what I expect. And this is how I think the Eurasian trade zone will grow and flourish with an energy skeleton system, gas pipelines, and Russia has a lot of oil shipments, and they don't seem to have these huge oil pipelines. The oil pipelines seem to be primarily running through the Caucasus region to cover movement from one sea to another sea. I'm not an expert in some of that, but there are far more skeletal systems for natural gas.
Mm-hmm.
And Russia is way ahead of the game, integrated nicely with Qatar for LNG shipments. Those ships that have like the triple domes on them.
Mm.
Okay, those are chambers for very cold temperature liquefied natural gas.
Uh-huh.
And the pipelines, I'm told, are like double cheaper. The pipelines of gas.
Mm-hmm.
And the United States is saying, no, we want Europe to become devoted to LNG shipments from actual ships on the ocean. And Germany and Europe is saying, no, we prefer the pipelines because it's like 30, 40, 50% cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And the United States says, we're your friends. And the Germans say, we would prefer to reduce our cost structure. And the U.S. says, we're slapping sanctions on all German companies involved with the construction or the finance of Nord Stream 2 that connects Germany and Russia. And Germany replies, you're not acting much like friends. And the United States comes back and says, yes, but you're part of the fascist group. Stay in line.
Yeah. Some friends, huh?
And that's how you get the breakdown of the Russian sanctions.
Uh-huh.
And France is now making moves in violation of the Russian sanctions. And their new president, oh gosh, I used to have his name at the tip of my tongue. Can't Can't think of the French president's name.
Oh, Macron or whatever.
Macron, yes, Macron. It's Macron.
Macron. Excuse me.
Okay, I did well in high school French. Actually, this is a little known fact. In my senior year of high school, we had 400 kids in my high school, and about half of them took French. Mm-hmm. I got the junior year French award. 200 kids. That's
a high percentage of French study.
Yeah, well, they had a good number taking Spanish, and a very small number taking German or Latin. Mm-hmm. And there was no Portuguese, there was no Swedish, there was no,
Yeah.
We had German, Latin. I think Latin had maybe one class, and it really didn't fill up with 30 kids.
Yeah.
But there were several French. They had French running around the clock.
Well, go ahead. In my era, it was always Spanish, though. I guess just.
Well, you grew up in California or Texas, right?
Well, South Carolina, similar, exactly though. Plenty of migrant farm workers.
Well, that's close to Florida.
Close enough, yeah. No, South Carolina, even now, I mean, there's lots of migrant farm working communities.
Oh yeah. Well, here's the connection to my high school for French. They had some Christian. I went to a Catholic high school. It was the same high school as Dan Marino of the Miami Dolphin quarterback fame. Mm-hmm. It was Catholic high school. It was run by Franciscan brothers, and a couple of them liked to put their hands down the boys' pants, if you know what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. But they had a connection with Quebec for the French-speaking Franciscans.
Gotcha.
Okay, so Frère Maurice was my French teacher for 2 years. Frère Maurice! he actually said to me once after class, he said, Monsieur. I can't remember how you say come here in French. I'm trying to forget my French because I need to work on my fluency in Spanish. But anyway, Frère Maurice called me in after class. Got straight A's in French. What's the deal? I didn't do something wrong. Speaking I didn't know French accent. Oh. All right, fine.
I'm sorry, buddy. You broke up on that story. I was on the edge of my seat, but we lost the edge of it. He calls you over. You have straight A's. You're like, what the hell's the deal?
And he said, you have the best French accent of all my students.
There you go.
And I said, well, great. And I walked away. I said, what's that worth? I don't know. I made my bones in advanced placement calculus. You know what I'm trying to say. Advanced placement chemistry, advanced placement physics, advanced placement calculus, baby. Calculus is where it's at. Anyway, we're entering the next chapter, Will. And this is a very dangerous chapter because the United States is realizing that the dollar is going to be rejected and they cannot stop it. We cannot go to war with China and Russia over the dollar like we did with Iran and Iraq. We prefer to go to war with countries that cannot defend themselves because of our brutality.
Mm-hmm. Toppling regimes.
We don't like even matches. I mean, we invade Grenada. We invade Panama. We killed 200 people on the streets in Panama with laser weapons, leaving an 18-inch diameter puddle of green fluid.
Jeez.
They remember.
When was that, Jim? Iraq. When was that Panama? When was that Panama invasion?
Gosh.
That was what's his name?
Noriega.
That was
something
80s.
Like 86.
Yeah, mid-80s. Okay.
We had a good opportunity to try out our laser weapons, which we denied ever developing in our Star Wars technology under Reagan administration. You ask the Panama natives, does the United States have laser weapons? Well, sure. I've got a friend who had a brother who was reduced to an 18-inch puddle of fluid on the street.
A mere 30,
200 killed.
A mere 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
We killed 2,000 Panamanians but 1/10 of them were with laser weapon.
Wow.
We love a good opportunity to test out weapons, like, Vietnam.
Yes, a nice faraway country where they speak a different language and
And they're not human.
nobody's gonna. It's not like Arizona or New Mexico where a space craft alien craft crashed. This is we'll go to a whole other country, language barriers, 1,000 at least miles away. Yeah.
Well, like 5,000 at least. Anyway, with Vietnam, they were not human. With Arabs, they are not human. With Native American Indians, they were not human.
Slaves, African American slaves, yeah, same thing.
And now what I find is detestable and repugnant is the attitude that the United States, although its leading minority population is Latino, we've got an attitude in South America that they're not human.
Interesting, really. The average American.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So this is getting very ugly, Will, but we're entering a new phase where I think we're going to have what's the word? No. I hate the word surrender. We're going to acquiesce. We're going to relinquish our monopoly mantle and say, have a good go for it.
Good luck kind of thing, huh?
Yeah. But the Eurasian trade zone has already captured some European countries.
Mm-hmm.
I expect Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, and Hungary to be primary players. And those are, except for Turkey, those are ex-Soviet bloc.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it'll be a little bit easier for them. And NATO has done shit for them. So they're going to make conclusions. Well, we joined NATO. We thought we'd enjoy a lot more, EU exports and a lot more economic development. But what we all seem to have gained is a bunch of missile silo sites.
Right.
Okay, Hungary is a devoted, I don't like the word enemy, adversary to the EU and NATO. I have tremendous respect for Viktor Orban. In Hungary, he's their president. He is blocking the Arab humid garbage influx. He is blocking missile emplacements for NATO. Mm-hmm. He's really a thorn in the side of the U.S. and EU, and I'm surprised we don't hear at least stories of attempts by our boys on his life.
Sure. Imagine a politician, a leader, whatever, an elected official actually acting in the interests of the populace. Too bad the government is... Go ahead.
Orban does not take small flights.
Does not take small air flights?
Airplane flights.
Mm-hmm.
Like Campos did of Brazil. And one of his cohorts, I don't want to say assistants, one of his cohorts was given a phone call as she was entering the small aircraft and decided not to enter and take the flight. Mm-hmm. She was tipped off.
Yeah. Well, I imagine the guys that really do this well, like Putin, they have body doubles all over the place. Nobody really, except for their right hand men and women, really know where they are. I would assume, especially when they're outside of their comfort zone.
I know, and that includes Obama.
Oh man, I just saw the last picture of him was jet skiing with our buddy Virgin Records guy down at Branson, down at the Caribbean island. That place looks really nice. I watched an episode on that. Anyway, do you want to finish on that statement, or can I make a statement on blockchain technology really quick as it pertains to